first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me, man.
yeah, of course. What do you think is the last time? I know things are weird right now with Zoom shows and virtual shows, but what is the last time that you really had a good old fashioned bomb? You know?
Um, I don't mean to sound I guess cocky. I just haven't had I haven't had a weird I haven't had a real bomb in a while because like with the Zoom shows, I guess I do so many podcasts that like I learned early on in the Zoom shows that like I'm just not going to do straight material. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to mix in a little material, but I'm also going to talk to the host and like talk to the people in there cuz it just doesn't really work well as like sitting there and saying my jokes. I didn't like that. So I learned that pretty quick in the Zoom comedy game. Um I had I'm trying to think. I was out I was on the road for a little bit um like the beginning of summer when things seemed to like loosen up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
when they kind of thought maybe things were going to be back on track, and I had, I guess, a rough show or two at what's it called, the comedy caravan, in it's in
Oh,
Kentucky.
yeah,
And
Louisville. Yeah.
yeah, it just but they weren't bombs. It was just like no one was there, you know? So
Right.
it's like, and it's funny. That's the thing about like hell shows is like, I think the longer I've done it, the more I've like a hell gig, kind of like you're describing what most people would describe. I prefer that so much to like the New York bar show where there's three people that aren't there for the show and the producer's like, we're going to do it anyway, and nobody wants to do it. Like that has become my true hell gig. Like I'd
Right.
rather go out on the road and take a bomb or get heckled, because then it's like, well, there's a story or something happening there. Like but yeah, I mean, I the most recent like full on like bomb, um the last time, and I'm sure if you've done this podcast enough, I'm sure someone has brought up the gig at the Borgata. But
You're the first.
am I the first?
Yeah.
It's just, it's so funny because it's like it's the best gig, uh except for the shows. It's, you get to
Right.
stay at the Borgata. The money's crazy good. It's 5 nights, only doing 20 minutes a night. They do a three comic show, 20 20 20. So you're doing 20 minutes a night for great money, great food, great hotel, but the shows are brutal. Like everyone in there is honestly not exaggerating, like over 70 at least, you know. And it's a big room, so they fill it up, but they're so old. And I did, for the first time in years and years and years, like not even what you would call a bomb, just like beyond that, full silence for 20 minutes, full
Right.
silence, like nothing, not a laugh for 20 minutes. And I honestly, like, I thought I was over getting shook up by bombs, and I came off and I was just like, fuck, like shook up, like Jesus Christ, like nothing. I got no laughs for 20 minutes. Like, and I was like doing like a material, and I was just like, oh Jesus. So that was my last like super bomb, you know.
Isn't it nice to have that thing of like you go, well, I think I'm over that point in my career where it's all, disaster if the show isn't good. Where I go, maybe I've made the wrong decision, and then
Yeah.
a show comes along and just reaffirms that you know nothing about this business. Where you can't predict it.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing though is like the nice thing is like you do. I agree. I do agree, but I also like went out after the show and saw everyone coming out, and I was like, oh, there's not a person in there under 70. Like I'm
Right.
okay. Like they and also tons of people were like, loved I loved your show. I loved your show. It's like, oh, you're like you don't have the breath in your lungs to laugh. That's the that's the
Right.
issue here. You know, like you kind of learn like you learn enough to know like that's not about the material because I've seen because that joke kills 95% of the time. So that's like you learn to kind of you realize you don't know everything, but you also learn to like know that there are times when it's not your fault. Like there are plenty of times when it's just not the situation for comedy.
I think a lot of that mentality comes with time in, right?
Right.
um you are able to look at this now and go, well, the audience isn't my demographic, and whatever, you cut your losses. But probably earlier on in your career, had you been in that situation, it might have been different, you
Oh,
know.
it would have shook me. I mean, it would have shook me because it shook me a little bit anyway, because that hadn't happened in so. I don't know if that actually, honestly, I don't know if that had ever happened. Even when I started, I don't know if I've ever done a set to literally nothing. I don't know if that had ever happened before. And it would have devastated me. Whereas that, it shook me a little bit, but I was like, no, that's something weird was going on. That's the audience. Like, I'm gonna go to the pool and the buffet tomorrow, and I don't give a shit. Pay me.
Right, exactly. You start to realize that this
Yeah.
is a business,
Right.
that
Right.
you go, well, am I getting paid well? Am I staying in a
Yeah.
hotel?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the worst way to make money.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like the situational thing is sometimes I think what the worst gigs are. Like when I my first ever paid gig was I moved to New York very early on. Like I was probably 6 or 7 months into comedy. I started in Cleveland and I was
Hmm.
probably 6 or 7 months in when I moved to New York. But my first ever paid gig was in Cleveland, and it was however much time it took to change out the instruments in between two punk bands. And a friend asked me to do it, and like now or even I mean even 7 years ago, I would have known to be like, hey man, you don't want a comedian then. Like
Hmm.
that's not a good time for a comedian. Like that's not that comedy doesn't work right in that in the switch over in between two punk
Right.
bands with not only you're in front of a punk crowd who are dancing and going nuts and that's the time for them to pee and get beers, but also there's just roadies behind you moving shit in and out. But I didn't know that. So like at that time, like somebody's gonna pay me to tell my jokes. Fuck yeah. And I did it. And um, I think now I could have with the skills I have now, I could have salvaged something out of it. I don't think any comic would have really done, I don't think you could put anyone there and they wouldn't do great. But I
Hmm.
think I could have salvaged something now because I would know. All right, I got to come in loud and hard and do some crowd work and match the energy. But I just had jokes. That's all I had. I didn't have any chops and I go up there and some guy just goes, fuck you. And then immediately the whole crowd just starts chanting, fuck you. They just started chanting, fuck you. And they didn't stop. And I was sitting there like, well, I got to get paid. And I just told my jokes like no one could hear them. No one could hear them. And I told my jokes for probably 7 minutes. And that was probably all the time I had at the time. I told my 7 minutes of jokes to a crowd of 100 people screaming "fuck you" in unison, and that was the first time I got paid to do comedy. And it was just like, that's that situational thing where you don't know early on, where there's times when you shouldn't have a stand-up comic, like
Right.
it's not the right forum for stand-up comedy.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up a good point where you start to learn that comedy, it's okay if comedy doesn't work at some places. It's
Yeah.
it's actually okay if it only works in a few places,
Right. Right.
because that's where we prefer to be.
Right. Yeah.
uh you get a lot of those people, corporate gigs, college gigs, whatever it is, where they go, well, we figured you would just get up and start. They go, well, nobody knows there's a show. They go, well,
Yeah.
I mean, you're funny, you'll just talk, right?
Right.
you know
Yeah. Yeah.
it's insane. And is it because people, they don't know, is it because people don't know the business? Do you think that's what it is? Or they just assume it's easier?
I don't. I think they just don't know how fragile comedy is. Like, I don't think they quite understand that. Like, it's the same. It's the same shit as like when someone says, "Tell me one of your jokes," and you're like, "No, you don't understand. It's a stand-up joke. It's not a street joke. It's not
Right.
really gonna work if I just tell it to you." It's like people don't quite understand the fragility of it, and that it does need to be, people need to be paying attention, and they need to be know what is coming. They don't need to know what's coming in your joke. They need to know that somebody is coming to tell them jokes. Like, I've done plenty of college gigs where I've had to be like, hey, get it. I don't care who does it, you got to get a kid up there to introduce me. Like, it doesn't have to see, he doesn't have to say anything. He just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Brendan Eyre." Like, that's it. Like, I'm not going up cold. Like, and they're like, "Why? And what's the difference?" And I'm like, "I don't know what the difference is, but there fucking is. Like, I can't
Right.
explain it to you." But me walking out there and picking up an empty microphone, for whatever reason, works not as well as just anyone introducing me. Like, and it's like, I don't know why that is really, but it's true, and so many people don't really get that, or I don't know. It's a weird thing.
It's a weird thing, and it's something where to us we go, we need like four things. You know what I mean? We need like a microphone. If there's lights, that would be preferable. Some sort of staging area, and an audience that's wants to see comedy. And that doesn't seem like a lot to us, I think. But then you go to somebody else, you do like a fundraiser or something where they go, "Hey, we would love to have a comedy show." You go, "All right, great." And you show up and there's no stage. And you go,
Yeah.
"Where do we perform?" And they go, "What do
Right.
you mean? You
Right.
perform right here." Right? Where it doesn't even cross their mind.
No, I
Uh
know.
it's an odd thing. I want to go back to real quick the show where you're opening, or you're doing, not even opening, right? You're doing the intermission for two punk bands,
And
right?
it's not even like an like, it's hard to explain. It's not even an intermission. They were like, my friend was kind of like, yeah, could be some time in between. You should kill it. I think the club will give you money. And so it was literally like them moving their drum kit off and the other guy bringing a drum kit on. It was like, it wasn't an intermission. It was
Right.
like, let's hurry this up and get the next band on. Have that
Right,
guy
right.
talk.
So is that in Cleveland?
That was in Cleveland. Yeah.
All right, so you do this, you do your time. When you're on stage, what is the feeling? Are you like just sort of blacking out and you do your material and you wait for someone to pull you off, or do you realize how bad it's going?
I mean, I knew how bad it was going. Well, they were screaming "fuck you," so yes,
Yeah, I guess it's easy to know.
I got the picture. They weren't that into me, but it was weird because it was like different, so different from a bomb, because like they literally couldn't hear any of my jokes. They were
Right.
screaming over me, So it was just a weird sensation of like, I guess I don't even know. I I I don't remember how I felt, but I think I kind of learned like, oh, that was just like they were gonna yell at whoever came up there. Like,
Right.
that was not me. Like, I don't think I took that one particularly to heart. I think the probably the bomb that I took most to heart was um how you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
I've only been in New York about 2 years.
Okay. All right. So there was when I moved to New York, kind of and the open mic scene now is really dispersed and all over the place, but it was a lot more it was a lot more, I guess, centralized sort of in that like it was like Monday everyone goes here. Tuesday everyone goes here. What there were sort of fewer mics and is like kind of everyone knew the good mics for that day and you went there. And there was a mic um called the Woodshed that I believe Mike Racine and Sam Morrell started. I think they started it, and it was kind of notoriously brutal, like
Hmm.
just rough, but all the best guys were there. Like it was like I remember, I would go and I would watch like Normand and all that crew and like those guys, and I mean even some guys from like the class above that. I think if I remember, but so my first that was probably like my second mic in New York City, and I didn't know anyone, and I had just moved there from Cleveland, and I didn't quite realize that like there is this thing in comedy that it's not that fair, but it's understandable where if you're new at an open mic, you don't get listened to that much, like
Right.
because we see so many people come through that it's like come through and then quit that you don't really pay attention until you're like, oh, okay, this guy's sticking around and he's funny, and I didn't quite grasp that because I was used to Cleveland where open mics crowds came to open mics. I
Right.
did people listening who don't know, in New York an open mic is all comics every time almost. And I went to that Woodshed mic. I remember it was raining. Went up. I did my 5 best minutes from Cleveland, like just that I had killed with in Cleveland, that made me think I could fucking move to New York, I did my 5 best minutes to nothing, pretty much nothing. And I remember walking outside on it was at Legion Bar, which is Metropolitan near Metropolitan Bushwick. And I remember walking out on the Metropolitan, just being like, what the fuck did I do? Like, why did I move here? Why would I think I can do this? And it was
Right.
just like,
Right.
it's such a devastating feeling. And then it's like, you just go do another one the next night. And then,
Yeah.
it's just,
It's funny because I started in Pittsburgh, so
okay.
very similar probably to where you go to these open mics and you go, that was a bad open mic. There was only like 5 people there,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then you come here and you go, wait, who listens to the jokes? And they go, the other right?
Yeah.
Like, but no one's laughing. No one's ever laughing. You
Yeah.
go, yeah,
Yeah.
no one's ever laughing, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy and it's an adjustment. I had a similar thing where like I go, well, I'm going to just do my best stuff and let people know that, I'm funny. And you get nothing, of course. And then you have to the worst is when you have to take a subway back to your
Right.
place of living,
Yeah.
because not
Yeah.
only are you sad that you've bombed, you're maybe rethinking this, you have to get on public transportation and just be like in your own head for that ride, you know.
Yeah. And not only do you have to do that, you have to I remember, taking the subway back from that open mic to an apartment I couldn't really afford that was a piece of shit compared to the place that cost half the money that I was living in Cleveland. It just being
Right.
like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right.
But then you realize like, oh yeah, you just keep putting in the time. People get to know you. You get booked on shows. Like it ends up like that is sort of the weeding out process, and it's rough and it sucks, but it is kind of what it is. But yeah, man, and then I guess I've had like, I mean, I've had plenty of like really weird gigs. I remember I felt really bad because I kind of fucked the show up for everyone. I was at I did I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something. I did Tom Delgado and Courtney McGuinness's show. I think it's at Pogo or something
Mm-hmm.
down. And that show is a great show. It draws kind of like a fashion crowd because it's a lot of people who Courtney knows, and Courtney's in fashion. It's a great show, and I love both of them. And Tomas was a guy who was like running around doing open mics with me and Anthony and Greg, right when I first got there. So I love that guy. And I'm doing the show, and I'm doing well, and this drunk girl in the back. I'm not talking about my mother at all. I'm not doing a joke about my mother at all. And um I was in a really bad mood. I was in a really bad mood that day. And I also have a very close relationship with my mother. She's really done I've had some mental health issues that she's really kind of, you know, basically saved my life. So my mom means a lot to me. And I wasn't talking about her. I didn't say anything about her. And some woman in the back, some drunk girl, like 23, just during a pause, in a totally unrelated joke, just goes, "Your mother's a whore." And I couldn't see her, so I couldn't really engage her. And like, I think I said something and no one answered. And I was like, all right, whatever, go on with the set. And I go on with the set, and it's going well. It went well. It was a good set. But as you know how you can have that, you can kind of be on autopilot, but in the back of your mind, something else is happening. And in the
Right.
back of my mind, I was getting angrier and angrier, and I was going, because I was thinking, like, that's not a heckle. You know what I mean? That's like
Right.
you're just yelling. You're just yelling a personal attack. Like, what the fuck is wrong? Like, I was getting angrier and angrier. And so I get off, um, and I go up to I go to the table in the back where she is with her boyfriend and some other dude. And I go, "Why did you say that?" I go, um, and she goes, "What?" And I go, "What do you mean, what? You call my mother a whore?" She goes, "So I don't know your mother." I go, "No, that you can't just yell." And during this time, in between comics, they do trivia. So it's Tomas and Courtney do trivia. So it's kind of quiet. And I go, "No, you can't just yell that at someone. That's really a fucked up thing to say." And her boyfriend goes, and I've been sober for 15 years, and I used to fight a lot when I was younger. I haven't been in a fight in 15 years. And but her boyfriend goes, "Hey man, why don't you get the fuck out of her face?" And this just happened to be at like a time when Tomas had paused. And I go, "All right, I will. Now I'm in your fucking face, and I'm gonna beat the fucking shit out of you." And I yelled, like, I was so furious that the idea that someone would yell that, and then her boyfriend felt entitled, and I felt so bad because it's like poor Tomas and Courtney and all the comic. I think Noah Savage came over and kind of was like, "Hey man, chill out," and that was nice of him. But um, I felt so bad because I kind of wrecked the show. I mean, look, that's a ridiculous thing to yell and fuck
Right.
that girl. But it's hard to come back. The show's hard to come back from when you hear someone just yelling in the back, "I will smash your fucking face." Like, it
Right.
makes the show weird for everyone. So
Right.
I felt really bad about that. I messaged Tomas and Courtney. It was like, I was just in a bad mood that day. I'm so sorry, but it's like, yeah, weird things like that happen sometimes where you're just like,
Right.
that's not a bomb, but that's just like a weird, like, eh, comedy experience where you're like, it's it's just because she was drunk and young and, whatever. It's not a big deal, but it's like, I don't know. It's such a weird job we have where that's a thing that happens sometimes.
I was just talking to maybe it was Michael Somerville. We were just saying like if some of the things that happened in someone else's job happen like they do in our job, you would stop working there. Like
Yeah,
if you worked
yeah.
at H&R Block and someone called your mother a whore, you would
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
I think I need to get a different job.
Yeah,
Right?
man. You would go to HR and be like, I'm gonna sue
Right.
the company.
Yeah. Do you know Ashley over in accounting?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll never believe it. And she's drunk. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's
It's insane.
it's so crazy. And yeah, it's just I was one time I was opening for the fuck is his name? Uh this dude Colin Kane.
Oh yes.
Me and Corinne Fisher used to open for him from time to time, and he is not a good dude. He is like he is like a insult comic without the wit, you know,
Yeah,
and like
without the comic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
He's
but like you know, I think when you're that new, that was like 2 years into New York. It's like, oh, you I'm getting feature pay, like fine, you know, like
Mhm.
his manager saw me and liked me and whatever. Um, so I was opening for him um at Bananas in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, and um I did my time and it was good. That room's usually pretty good. And there was a woman. I can't remember her name. I don't think she does comedy anymore. She's a nice woman. She's pretty funny. And she was doing a guest set. And during the guest set, two tables started fighting about whether or not she was funny. Like, not yelling at her. They were arguing with each other, and a woman got up and dumped a drink on another woman's head. And I'm in the back of the room. I dumped a drink on another woman's head. And then a man at that woman's table stood up and punched that woman in the face, and it turned it turned into like a 30-person brawl, shirts off. There were shirts off, and it was just a brawl. There was no show. There were like 12 cop cars in front, because that club is in a hotel. There were like 12 cop cars in front of a hotel, and I was like, what is this job? Like, what
Right.
are we doing? It's like, yeah, at that point you just have to laugh and be like, and the bouncer, of course, was like some like 14-year-old kid, you know, who's like, what the fuck's he gonna do? Nothing, you know, like it's just, I don't know, it's an absurd, it's sort of funny because like it's an art form, but also we're kind of just selling alcohol. You know, like
Yeah, right.
like there's this mixture between like it's a creative outlet, but also we're kind of just there to keep people in their seats long enough to spend money on drinks.
Right. Exactly. If you know, if you took away the microphone, it would be an Applebee's. You know, a lot of these
Yeah,
places. It's
yeah,
just like, do you have chicken tenders and Coors Light? Great. You
yeah,
are a comedy club.
yeah,
It's insane. I know that feeling too, where you're like, as a comic, you're like, oh, I'm sure someone will help me, you know, and then nobody does. You
right,
go, oh, I am
yeah,
truly alone up
yeah,
here, you know. I did, it was an open mic when I first started in Pittsburgh, and you do the classic thing where no one's listening, it's in some crowded bar, and you start going after the crowd, you know,
yeah,
where it's like, well, I've seen other people do all this.
yeah,
So I'm like going after this lady. She keeps walking in front of the beer cooler that
yeah,
the mic is in front of. And like I go to do my last joke and I see her boyfriend like rifling around in his pocket, and he just pulls out a knife. And he pulls out a knife and he's sitting there like this with the knife. And I go, I look at the bar manager. I go, hey, he's got a knife. And the
yeah,
manager, he just goes like this.
yeah.
Like he
What's
didn't
he
even
gonna
say
do? Yeah,
anything, right?
yeah,
He goes, what am
yeah.
I going to do? You know?
Yeah,
So I just do my last joke and I leave. And then they go, yeah, well, you don't walk to your car because that guy's waiting for you, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just insane where you go, wait, you don't call somebody. There's
yeah.
no, because there's no HR for comedy. You
I
know,
know.
if there
There's
was,
no one. Yeah,
the
yeah.
phone
It's
would never
crazy.
stop ringing.
I li- I, I like the like. I like being at the point where like kind of the circuit that I do, like I'm not really like I'll fill in headlining at like A clubs, but mostly I'm making my living at this point like headlining a lot of B clubs,
Hmm.
and that's fine. Like um and I'm sure I'll make the jump at some point, but I like that I've been kind of through the circuit of the clubs that I headline enough now that I know now, okay, this club, you're not getting any help
Right.
from the bouncer. Like it just helps to know ahead of time. It's like it's
Yes.
fine. I can handle a table that's talking. I just would rather know ahead of time. Does that guy do anything or does he do nothing? And
Right.
now like I know, okay, if I'm at this club and there's a rowdy table, no one's going to tell them to shut up. Like that's such helpful information to have ahead of
Yes.
time to be like, okay, at least now I know the situation I'm in and that I'm in charge. Like that's
It's
huge.
helpful, and it's also good to know sometimes which clubs will care or not care if you go after someone in the audience, because I
Sure.
have
Yeah.
had, you know managers pull me aside and go, what are you doing? And I go,
Right.
what am I doing? They were yelling at me,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they were talking the whole time. They go,
Yeah.
hey, we're in the business of selling food here. You
Yeah.
don't get people like, so
Yeah.
that's, and it's also, and it makes it like when you go to certain clubs that do it really well, you're like, it's such a breath of fresh air, you know.
Oh, it's the best when you're in a club that like just doesn't tolerate like because I mean I don't I think non-comedians often are so fascinated by heckling and they're so
Hmm.
interested in heckling and like heckling is fine. Like
Right.
what kills me, like not fine. Nobody should heckle. Like it's not fine. But I mean fine from my point of view in that I'm confident in my abilities to deal with it.
You can
But
handle it, right?
yeah, yeah, I bet I've done it enough times to know like psychologically I have the upper hand because the crowd is rooting for me. B, I have a fucking microphone, which means I'm louder than you. There's so many things in the comedians. See, you're drunk, I'm not, like there's so many things in the comedian's favor usually in that situation. But I think what non-comedians don't get is the the people that are sort of loudly talking to each other and ignoring the show is how much way more devastating that is because it's like that's hard to address like because then you can't there's not very much funny to say about that you can't if no one's talking to them you have to just be like hey shut up and then that's not funny everyone gets weirded out by that that's like that's the true heckle is like drunk people talking to each other. And I think people don't get that sometimes. They think the true heckle is like, you're not funny. And it's like that
Right.
barely ever happens, like
Right. It's the people that are disrupting the atmosphere,
yes,
because
exactly. They're taking other people's attention.
right, because one person, you take that away pretty
Yeah.
quickly,
Yeah.
right? Multiple people, now they're disrupting the table next to them, so they're getting antsy,
Yeah.
and because they're asking for their check early, the people next to them are starting to get, and quickly it becomes like a wildfire. We're like, oh my god, everybody is talking, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. Because one person, yeah, one person, you can make it funny. It's great. It's fun. Like I almost don't mind when that happens. One time, a guy, I can't remember what he said. He said I don't know. He heckled something that was like not just threw off the timing of a joke. It wasn't mean, it was like that's the other thing non-comedians sometimes don't understand is that like most heckles they're like they like you and are trying to
Right.
help you but it's like no you don't understand man when you yell at that point you just fuck the joke up because
Right.
the timing like but he did that and then I kind of went in on him a little bit. I don't go in too hard unless someone's like a prick, like I just kind of had some fun with him and he kind of knew he was wrong and he was in the front row and he just handed me a $50 bill And so then I was like, you know what? $50, anyone in here can heckle me. Heckle time. Like, just open the fucking floor. This is a way better job. Like, it was like, I was like, for $50, go ahead, say whatever you want.
Right. I might as well just sit down,
Yeah,
because if
yeah,
enough
exactly.
people do it, you've made your money for the weekend,
Yeah,
depending
yeah,
on what club you're at.
yeah, yeah,
$50 that's a night of MC work.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's not a bad
exactly.
night.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this before we get out of here. I love to know what other comics do. I know, it's maybe been a while since you've had one of those big bombs, the sort of the earth shaking thing, but you have a bad set, something doesn't go right, you just feel off about it. What do you do to cope with that after? Like, I know some people, for me, I'm a, food guy. Obviously, fast food is always a good thing. Some people, they smoke, they drink, they talk to a friend. What is sort of your thing for coping with a bad show?
Um. So I have my comedy reactions are very similar to Anthony DeVito in that we both get really angry and mad at ourselves. Um, um, and so oftentimes I will call him. I'll call him and kind of go through it, and he'll sort of talk me down, because
Mm-hmm.
like we both uh, go to an angry place rather than a sad place where we're
Mm-hmm.
pissed off at, like, I didn't work hard enough, or I didn't try this when I wanted to, like. And so he's very similar in that way, and so I'll call him, and kind of he'll talk me down. But I don't know, man, at this point I've been doing it long enough, I guess, as a full-time job, where, like, I kind of just suck it up. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
just, I'll kind of just go, you know what? Like, this is a bad one. I'm, I'm gonna feel shitty for tonight. I'll feel a little bit better tomorrow, and then forget about it by the third day. Like, I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of kind of to that point now where, like, and also, like, I don't know, your bombs sort of slide on a scale, whereas, like, when you're early on, your bombs are super rough. And now what I consider bombing is like a fine show, really.
Right.
Like, I feel I've bombed because I've seen those jokes destroy, but the crowd doesn't think I'm bombing. The crowd thinks it's a good show, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just I now consider a bomb, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way. I think most comedians progress in this fashion. Now I consider a bomb where I'm not getting the reactions that I know certain jokes do normally get, so, like, it's usually not too big of a deal.
I think that's I think that's a good thing, and I think that's the only way you would be progressing is if that's how your bombs progress. Because
Yeah.
if you're doing this 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, and you're still having devastating nights of
Yeah.
comedy,
Yeah.
something is wrong.
Yeah, something's
It's
wrong. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Something's
exactly.
not
You shouldn't be
clicking.
doing this. Yeah, yeah,
Right. Exactly. You
yeah,
probably wouldn't be. If
yeah.
if
Right.
you go if you get past the first couple years and it doesn't get any better, you might but then again, I think we probably both know people that you go, you've been doing it really that long. Wow.
Yeah, that long.
Uh
Yeah, you got a rich uncle, or what's the deal there?
right, exactly. Brandon, thanks so much for doing this, man. I'm sure people know where to find your podcast, but tell people where to find you and the podcast.
So you can check out the Rad Dude Cast anywhere you get podcasts. I also do a comedy crossword puzzle podcast with the great Greg Warren called One Down. You can get that wherever you get podcasts, and then you can find me Eyre Bud, EYRE Bud, on most social media, except I've accidentally become somewhat big on TikTok. So, Real Brendan Eyre on TikTok, a big TikTok guy now, but I won't follow you unless you're a woman who twerks. So don't expect to follow back.
That's good information for people. Uh Brandon, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.